Okay, welcome everybody to this Best Practice Network Asset Maintenance and Reliability Forum. Many thanks to Dennis McCarthy, who is in the UK this morning.
So the aim of this session is to set out the fundamentals for delivering zero breakdowns, and also it's a very achievable goal. I'll talk a bit about how that's done and what successful organisations have done to achieve that, and also how the Lean TPM benchmark assessment helps others to do the same. Now, Lean TPM, it's the title of a book I wrote with Nick Rich. Nick's a Lean specialist, my background's TPM, but actually the two very much focus in the same direction, and it's a combination of the two that really accelerates progress. So it's just the overlap of those two as equal partners. And then we'll finish off with some practical steps for organizations that want to start or continue that journey. So it's one of those things that continuous improvement, in my view, is about building on what exists, not starting afresh. It's something about systematically developing capability. So the way that you do that with Lean and TPM is, if you look at this chart on the left-hand side, vertical, you've got OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, or whatever measure you use of good, and over time, which is on the horizontal axis, if the equipment isn't looked after, it starts to deteriorate, and then once it will fail. Once you've fixed it, it'll work a little bit better than it did before. So on average, it'll start to rise. Now, the thing about sudden failures is that the root cause of sudden failures is basically two things. It's equipment condition and human error. There are two reasons for breakdowns. Now, by breakdowns, I mean something has failed. And within the TPM world, there are the distinct difference between a failure, a breakdown, and a minor stop, so a short stop like a jam. And they both have different methods of dealing with. So we're talking here about breakdowns, but it will impact on minor stops as well. So to get rid of breakdowns, the first step of the journey is to set what we call normal conditions, which is about getting the equipment to the stage where it's less likely to break down, looking at reducing accelerated sources of contamination. You can read the issues there, but the basic conditions and human error are the two reasons why equipment suddenly fails without warning. And if it's done it before, it'll do it again. Now, getting to zero breakdowns is actually a first step. It means you've got stable operation, and that frees up time. And if you use that time to progress further, you will lock in the gains. But if you take the time, let's say you reduce headcount as a result of the time you save, what will happen is that you'll return to the conditions that you had before. So actually, to get to zero breakdowns and beyond, to lock in the gains and continue, you need to focus on the second layer of losses, because zero breakdowns won't get you 100% effectiveness. So the second step of the journey is about resilience. It's about getting performance, but with less effort. And also that means that when you've got short runs, which the future is about shorter runs than you're doing now, customers want more choice and so on. So you're looking at setting optimum conditions, and there's a whole set of tools for doing that. So the thing about the zero breakdowns journey is it's a two-stage process. Lean and TPM together can deliver that. And the core of the first phase of the Lean TPM roadmap, which is what the title of this session is about, is around zero breakdowns, involves establishing basic equipment conditions. So, and then putting in the working practices to keep those conditions. So think of that asset care to maintain basic conditions is like healthcare for humans. You've got routine stuff, apple a day keeps the doctor away. That's what we say in the UK. And when we work in Holland, they usually say, well, it depends how hard you throw the apple, but it's the routine stuff. And on equipment, it's look, feel, listen. The thermometer, as a human, if you get a cold, you might take your temperature to know whether it's cold or flu, and then inject the right sort of medicine. The same with equipment. It's understand the triggers and then inject the right activity to restore or repair. So the thing about asset care is it's really that's what you need to do to maintain the basic conditions. And this is a combination of production activities and maintenance activities. So it's not just about maintenance. And the TPM in the M we call manufacturing rather than the classic maintenance, because it really is a way to get zero breakdowns. The way to get zero breakdowns is by getting that cross-functional ownership between production and maintenance. Now, research shows that based on analysis of over 500 years of equipment runtime, that about 85% of the issues, the countermeasures to breakdowns, are as a result of getting the right best practice in place. Because you can restore equipment, but actually you need to look at, well, why did it get in that condition in the first place, and how do we stop it? So the stage of getting the best practice asset care in place is really important. The other thing is that around 50% of issues are down to human error. So actually that has an impact on production activities as well: startup, steady state, and close down. Effectively, these 6 issues around the best practice around these 6 areas of work routines is what gets you to zero breakdowns. And the thing about that is that getting to zero breakdowns, as I mentioned earlier, is a sort of first stage, because what that does is frees up time to add more value. And so best practice development is the foundation for zero breakdowns. Now, there's 15% of, just based on average, 15% of issues that are around technical weaknesses. But actually, by getting these 6 areas sorted out, you clear away the statistical noise and you can see where the technical issues are. So you also free up time to deal with those technical issues, which in a reactive environment or even in a stable environment, very often you don't have. And the glide path to delivering zero breakdowns and beyond is set out here. So you've got steps 1 to 4. The first step is very much about maintaining basic conditions. And you want the competence to be able to reduce accelerated wear. So the thing about human error is lack of knowledge, lack of understanding of the equipment, lack of skills, is that accelerates where things wear out faster than they should do. And so you need to learn how to reduce that accelerated wear. Sources of contamination are very much part of that. If dirt and dust gets into moving parts, it delivers, creates more problems, and you get a sort of an unstable wear rate, so it makes it difficult to predict. So the steps to zero breakdowns are actually well set out, and each step will deliver significant gains, but it takes time to deliver the capabilities to sustain zero breakdowns. And the thing is that not everybody who starts the journey is able to continue it, even if it is fairly straightforward. You might ask, why is that? Well, let's talk a bit about why that is. Making progress depends as much on mindset and outlook as it does on technical skills. And to sustain progress over time, organizations need to have the intent to improve, which leads to developing capability to improve. So it's about the human condition is that we work in patterns of behavior typically. And to break a pattern of behavior, you either have pain as a trigger, which means it's so painful you have to stop, or pleasure, which means you're driving towards something. And what we need to do as part of the blueprint to move towards zero breakdowns is have a reason for change, which means that impacts on the way we work, on workflow management. We get ownership execution. We learn in the workplace stuff that goes wrong. And every year we learn more about how we do our job so we can get better. But if we do that formally across the business, we get a blueprint for improvement. So the book I wrote, Lean TPM, is called A Blueprint for Change. And that's blueprint is a way of looking at how you do stuff and changing it. So it's about leadership. It's about it's developing skills, but it's also recognizing that on a day-to-day basis, you need to invest some time in learning how to improve. Now, through that process, you improve effectiveness. Overall equipment effectiveness is the key goal. Continuous improvement in overall equipment effectiveness is the key goal of TPM. And for those of you who aren't familiar with TPM, it covers 3 areas. It covers uptime or availability. So you can see the diamond here in this particular company as it moves from left to right. They've been able to stabilize and improve availability or uptime. So that's zero breakdowns. The rate or performance rate there's been a step change around month 5 as availability goes up, performance goes up, capabilities go up. So overall, going from left to right, this case study here, this organization, which is it's a chemical plant, but it's a very similar typical improvement. You'll see that as you improve OEE, the variation in OEE reduces. That gives you resilience. So this company has achieved a more stable uptime, step change in performance. But an important takeaway here is that effectiveness measures how well you do what you plan to do. Now, nobody would plan to have breakdowns. Nobody would plan to have speed losses. Nobody would plan to have scrap and rework. And these are things that are all avoidable. But you might ask yourself, well, if that's the case, why doesn't everybody, and I often do, ask myself, why doesn't everybody do this? And the reason is that human behavior is hardwired with a preference for inertia, for being the same, getting into a pattern. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And a fundamental ingredient for delivering zero breakdowns is finding a business case to overcome inertia. And that business case, it's got to be a bit more than saving costs. Yeah, we all want to save costs, but actually, when you look at the gains that you get from zero breakdowns, you get increased capacity, you get better quality, you get better performance. So as a business, it helps you to thrive. And in the situation we're in at the moment, I was talking with Kevin beforehand about the uncertainties in the Australian marketplace. It's the same in the UK and Europe. You need that flexibility. You don't want to be every day being a white knuckle ride where you only just get through. You need that flexibility to focus on managing the future. So the goal of moving towards overall improvement effectiveness to zero breakdowns is part of the drive towards continuous improvement in OEE with the emphasis on continuous. So let's look at the research that we've carried out into around 400 organizations and their improvement journey. This table is based on the research into that, and it summarizes the mindset and the skill set characteristics of the lowest scores versus the highest scores. So the ratings in the blue boxes are the assessments from the Lean TPM diagnostic. And now that uses a 1 to 5 scale. And what you're seeing here is the averages of the mindset and skill set criterion that we use. So the thing about the highest scoring organizations is that they typically deliver around 30%, around a third more benefits in terms of quality, cost, and delivery. So the gains are significant, but the point about the business case is that without a business case to drive you there, you will find that the resources allocated to driving towards zero breakdowns will get reassigned as soon as the first problems arrive. Now, it's not that you need people dedicated to the goal. It ideally needs to be done as part of the routine, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there is something around getting this balance between mindset and skill set, and that being driven by a business-led improvement goal. So typically that would be breaking out of reactive, scaling up, or improving effectiveness to get towards zero defects, which is an aspirational goal, because typically the future is about new products and services, to bringing new products in. So you need to get to those to be able to deliver effectively those products and services with low defects. Okay, so Kevin mentioned that we'd run some TPM training or I'd run some TPM training in Australia back in I think 2018, and we asked companies on the course to analyze to use the Lean TPM diagnostic, which is available to BPM members. And this summary here just shows the skill set and mindset scores. Now, what's interesting about the average scores for each organization is that around 40% of the scores are in inertia. So this is really organizations that are going along doing what they're doing. Now, these are successful businesses. Typically, what I've found is the companies who join the network want to get better. So around 40% of these companies were in balance in inertia. Around 50% of the profiles showed that people didn't have the opportunity to use the skills that they already have. And only around 10% of the organizations were actually in transition. So this is typically what we find is that around half of organizations are so engrossed in the day-to-day that they're not investing the time in improvement, and they want to get better, but actually there are issues that get in the way. The thing about this slide, the reason I put it up is that these companies all have the same goal. They want to get better, but each has a different next steps. So the three categories of profile has a different next steps. And the way forward for each of them is similar, but the priorities and the methods that they want to focus on are different. So the people who lack the skills, the people, sorry, who have more skills than they're using, it's really about how you're going to use that. And if you're looking to drive improvement, well, you know, the gains that are around 4 to 6 times the investment. So the gains are there. So these companies haven't found or haven't learned why that's important. The people who are in inertia, you know, that's really about they're doing well, they're doing big successful, but actually you need to build that internal process to get better. And the goal of zero breakdowns is a great goal to do that. So the way that organizations the way that successful organizations deliver zero breakdowns and beyond is that they have an improvement structure, which is typically around these milestones. There's a preparation stage, preparation activity. There's some workplace learning, and when you're starting off, it's good to do this as a pilot, get a model area, and then drive that the learning from that model area forward into other areas. So let me just go into, so this is the output from a diagnostic review. And what you've got is the same logic of mindset and skill set, but there's a more detailed breakdown. So on the right-hand side, the mindset, it's really about the management process and how you set priorities. And then on the left-hand side, the skill set is really about execution. And as engineers, I think most of the people on this session are engineers, but as engineers, you know, we tend to spend a lot of time in the practical here and now, but actually you need to get that balance right. Now, this example of an organization, should explain that the blue scale in the center is the blue section in the center is a 3 on a scale of 1 to 5. So the diagnostic assessments are on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low, 5 being high. And what we see with this example, this company, is that it has some strengths around cost control, business direction. It knows where it wants to get to, and it's got strengths in terms of getting good compliance to work return. So this is a pharmaceutical company, and compliance is pretty key in that business. But the weaknesses are around cross-functional collaboration. So management processes tend to be silo-oriented. That means that improvement processes aren't as effective as they might be. There's a lot of initiatives, but they're not connected, and so you're pulling on the same resource. And there's a weakness in data capture and analysis. Actually, not data capture, it's more about people doing stuff with it. So there's a lot of reporting, pharmaceutical, hey, surprise, surprise, but there's food as well, but not a lot of work going on to do it. So the thing about the diagnostic is it helps as part of a review process. Now, this is the pitch, it's totally free, you can use it. Kevin will help you to interpret it. We've got, our work is around helping organizations to improve, but it's actually designed to help you do better. And by raising management awareness, you can then focus on, well, what are we going to do about this? What's our next step? And next steps are around practical projects, which apply on the shop floor. So this is using the skill set, the left-hand side of that diagram, introducing workplace learning, using practical projects and cross-functional teamwork to make sure that you learn how to change, how to build on what exists, because whatever you're doing, you've got gaps in the fabric of management. If you're not already at zero breakdowns and beyond, then the reasons are that you're not utilizing the resources that you've got fully, or you've got some gaps in knowledge and best practice. And we work with some pretty switched on organizations. What we find is that very often these gaps are just lived with. You look past them. So the workplace learning pilot project initially, but model project, model area as you move on, is a way of looking at what we should do, where the gaps are, what we should do differently, testing it out. It takes 2 or 3 iterations to get it right. So give yourself, invest the time, give yourself the time to do that. And then once you've got that, you can cascade it in a systematic way. The cascade generally leads to delegation, where ultimately, if there's routine stuff, it's delegated to the frontline team. But that's for another workshop maybe. So just the key learning points, final slide. The roadmap to zero breakdowns is well defined, but it involves changes to technical skills and outlook. It's the two. As you saw in the analysis of the companies in Australia that we've analysed, a lot of the time the skills are there, but actually it's the outlook that's missing. You want to use the time released because if you get to zero breakdowns, you'll save time from reacting. You want to use that time to improve resilience and lock in the gains. And in order to get that change, you need to have a business case. So it's really around, the best way to deliver improvement is through growth. So it's really looking at how we give better value to our customers. And mindset is as important as skill set. So getting that alignment between these drivers to get the business case for improvement is key. Technical changes will get you so far, but actually you need to get the alignment across the management team, particularly production, maintenance and quality, in my experience. The Lean PM diagnostic highlights where the gains come from or what's holding you back and how to accelerate progress towards that business case. So there's a report that you complete the diagnostic. It's 10 questions. It's multiple choice questions. It's pretty simple, about 10 minutes. It's good to do it in a group, to get a discussion around where the gaps really are. Filling it out alone provides some gains. And then the output next steps would be to start with a pilot area to test out and refine current methods and build engagement. And if the people involved in that practical project are also involved in delivering the improvements, they will have the ownership to drive that forward. So the diagnostic report will recommend where to start, what to work on, and it provides recommendations at 3 levels: the senior management, middle or first line management, and frontline teams. But those 3 areas together are what gets you to zero breakdowns and beyond.
Dennis,
So
can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
Dennis,
go for it.
I want to just go back and just remind everybody to please use the chat, or when we go to Q&A, to come back. So a number of the team will be in there. I think the business case is an important one, but if I'm an engineering manager or maintenance manager, so I'm sitting in that middle manager role, any tips on how I can start to drive that discussion? Because just from experience, sometimes it may have not been aligned in terms of why we need to be doing this and the impact. So any leadership, if I'm an engineering plant manager sitting here going, I will need to do something, any tips on how we can maybe start to make this business case alignment?
Yeah, if you go back to this, it's sort of interesting because organizations are generally in a state of consistency. The day-to-day. So each day you've got issues to deal with, and those issues take up a lot of time. If we look at the 50% profiles of people who want to do more relaxed skills, what you've often got there is, from a maintenance manager perspective, is that the maintenance function is more or less standalone, and you have influence over maintenance, the people in your organization, and a good operator, a good team leader, a good production team leader will be easy to work with. But typically, because in companies in this situation, organization, they will be focused on output. So the thing from the maintenance manager in this perspective is it's really about trying to get permission to start with a small area. So pick your problem area. Look at, we run something, a 3-4 day workshop where you take cross-functional teams through practical projects and we don't do any preparation, but you actually show what the issues are, and through practical examples with a small group of people who want to do stuff, you can start to flag up what the issues are and also where the solutions might be. Now that process is a good way for maintenance managers who are in that situation where they're pretty much working in a silo and can't get the cooperation and can't get the can't get the sort of on the radar of the senior team. By doing a small project in an area and showing the improvement and showing what it takes, typically low cost and no cost stuff, then that's a good way of making progress. You need to get that cross-functional focus. If you can't do that, then it's a case of each year you've got a business planning process, and each year putting forward your pitch, if you like, for the problem area, the problem asset, and how to improve that. For those organizations that are in balance, so that's the 40%, then that typically is where there is good collaboration, and it's really a case of, again, starting with a pilot maybe, but you'll have more opportunity to put a plan together. And in addition to the diagnostic, the sort of, we call it hidden factory diagnostic, the top level diagnostic. There are other simple diagnostics around improving reliability or performance management, which are really useful for creating what we call a leader learning club. So if you, as an engineer, maintenance engineer, can sponsor a leading learning club topic, a bit like this, we can get the management team together and start a debate about, well, how do we improve? Where do we want to go to? That's where you start to develop the business case. And if you pick key line, a line that's growing, or a line where you can use the capacity again, that's where you would start to make a difference. So the maintenance manager there becomes a leader, but actually you start to build that improvement network. Now, if you're in the 10% of profiles where skills exceed mindset, happy days, because that's where you're driving forward. And if you develop the capabilities of your engineers to be able to work with production to get rid of accelerated wear and the things that cause problems, that's really where you want to be. Does that answer your question, Kevin? Hello, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I think it did, and I think it's about understanding, like you say, having that pilot, also understanding who you can influence as well. Yeah. So like a team or supervisor, and go, and if you can resolve some of their frustrations, or the typical, CI and respect for people, but if you can start to show, if we can do this here, where else could we do it? Then you build that momentum as well, which is why the pilot is so important. And I've got a question about.
Sorry, Kevin. The other point I perhaps didn't emphasize enough is that this isn't a dedicated team. So this is people investing part of the time as part of the day job. So you're looking at getting a team between, say, 5 and 7, maintain operators and engineers to work on a particular issue as part of the day job, investing between five. If you're just starting, maybe a bit more, but 5% of time is what we look at. So that's 2 hours a week, 1 day a month. And if they're supported by the maintenance manager or facilitator, ideally, so that you can start to pull out the lessons over, say, 3 months, good quarters, a good cycle, then you'll start to bring to the surface the real issues, which are around, that point around asset care and best practice. You start to bring out examples of those. So as a business, as a small team, you're flagging up practical examples which you can then feed up and if you like, manage upwards, educate the senior team in terms of where to invest the time and resource.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's good. Thank you. I'll let you. I've got a couple of others, and I've got a couple of questions coming through as well. So we'll let you just finish off because we're coming near that 35-minute type point.
Okay. I
think you're on your last slide. Anyway.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll put that up.
That's okay. If
was you on that, just that last slide, or?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, no, that's fine from that point of view. So I've got a couple of questions, but I think generally there, as you said, we're looking for some key learning points, and the app of the day, and the restore and repair is some of those routines. And I think you've pulled out the importance of the pilot to as a cross-functional team thing as well, just not a maintenance engineering activity.
Yeah, I think it's important to there's so much you can go so far in engineering, but as an engineering manager or as an engineer, as a maintenance engineer, you depend very much on the production guys to implement real improvement. You can do technical changes. There's a lot you can do with sort of visual indicators to make it easy to see, inspection at a glance. But if but accelerated wear is one of the key drivers of failure, and so getting the production guys on board so that they don't make mistakes, or you look, not spraying stuff with water. Or I remember one company I worked with, the biggest problem they had was one of the ships. They had a guy with a forklift truck and he kept knocking things over. It's like, well, you need some training. You shouldn't do that. But from the engineering manager's point of view, he felt unable to deal with it. He just kept replacing the parts. And the reality was, until you spoke to production about, you could put a guide up, etc., to stop the part getting damaged. But it's really recognizing the apple a day thermometer injection needle and the startup steady state close down. It's really about getting the right standard practices in place, the right skills, and the right competencies. Yeah,
and I think that's a great slide with the apple a day, and they say the startup, steady state, and shutdown as well. And it's an interesting one, just to have in front of your team and say, where are we, and how well are we doing those things as well. So, okay, Dennis, if you could stop your screen share, we'll go back to the group.
Yeah,
I think we've got a couple of questions that we can cover off from there. So again, please use the chat if you can to put some questions through. Okay, so I'm going to go to Megan first, because you had one about behaviors, Megan. So as you're first up, you get the chance to ask the question as well.
Oh, it was just that in the chat, I'm just looking for any tips that that you might suggest for building in behaviour change into the routine. So it's obviously always hard to change behaviour, but if people buy into it, but I guess it needs to be a part of their routine or part of their operational process. So how do you get people to that point, I guess? The question.
Okay, no, that's a good point. The thing about behaviors is that if you to get to sort of stable operation and improvement, you need people to be consistent. You need to have compliance to best practice, and it takes you want that positive outlook. But what it actually takes is the leadership of the organization to be aligned in their outlook. So the key thing is people will adhere to consistent working practices if the standards are right. And what you want working routines that are easy to do right, difficult to do wrong, and simple to learn. And the standard is set by the senior team. So if you're an engineering manager and you know that there are things people have difficulty doing, you need, as that leader, to allocate some resource to make it easy to fix that. I said 50% of human error, 50% of issues around human error. There are 4 reasons for human error. It's did something, didn't do something, or mistook an instruction. But all 4 of that, there's 4 of those, but those are 3 countermeasures. And so all 3 of those are within the remit of the management team. So what I find is that there's a first step of getting the team to have a common outlook. So behavioral change is really simple. It's not that complex, and the way you do it is through leadership. And the lever that leadership use, I know this sounds a bit maybe touchy-feely, but the lever that you use are the conversations that managers have. So if managers have a consistent conversation, and you know something happens with a person doesn't conform, then you're looking at why didn't that person conform. Now it could be that the person's disenfranchised, so not engaged. A good way to get people engaged is getting them to improve the focus, that the work environment. And there's a thing called 2-second lean, which we've been working on in DAK, where there's the guy in the States in his organization. He said to people, look, give me 2 seconds improvement every day using lean tools, and you know, I'll give you the time, but give me 2 seconds improvement. That's all I'm asking for. So he got people engaged with that, and over the year, so this 2 seconds every day, that cumulative gain is significant. But the biggest significant gain was that people got engaged. So you got compliance because the leadership showed direction and showed that people were valued. So you know, the key to engagement is that people have got something to get behind, and that they're giving help. You know, because sometimes some people just, you know, they don't want to. It's not that they don't want to get involved; they don't have the confidence to get involved. And then, having got involved, they need that role model that says this is, because people tend to set their behaviour based on role models, so they need the role models to look up to or to drive towards. So it's really about, for me, if people are not behaving, if people are not compliant, it's not the people, it's the leaders. Does that make sense? And it's not something that you can, actually, it's something you can do quite quickly. You can change the state of mind, people's minds quite quickly. But if you said over a year, how am I measuring behaviors? Am I measuring it in terms of number of ideas coming forward? What would I do to change that? If you get the leaders together and you get them to buy into the fact that, you know, it's this truism that people are the biggest value. That's really where you need to start your process of changing behaviors. Start with the final point. In any organization of, say, around 200 or so people, there's about a dozen key opinion formers, and they're the ones you need to focus on, because they're the ones that will deliver the change to the rest. Does that make sense, mate?
Yeah,
awesome. Thanks, Dennis. Thank you.
Dennis, I suppose that leads into the point about what gets measured gets managed as well. So if the leadership is measuring how quick a breakdown is recovered or those type of things, then you're rewarding that proactive, not rewarding that preventative as well. So I think, as you say, it's our language which is right. You know, if all we talk about is how to recover, but we switch it to, you know, have we prevented and rewarding the right outcomes, then the mindset will change as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the thing, though, you sort of need to be, so with measures, with key performance indicators, you know, I see a lot of companies, and even ones that switch on, that they've just got too many. And when you look at the reality on the shop floor, all right, you've got the reports that you use in the meetings, but on the shop floor, it's really a case of, you know, am I managing the future, or am I managing the past? And that's the outlook. You know, it's really measuring the enablers that deliver the future performance, and it isn't always reflected in the KPI. So I totally agree, Kevin, everything you say. It's just, when I hear the word measure, sometimes measures are subjective, you know, or qualitative, and it's really, have I got the engagement? Have I got people buying in? And so, and that can be measured, but often isn't.
That's great. That's great. I'm going to ask Adam. Adam's for some great commentary in the chat here. Adam of Yates, and we will share it with the team. Is that okay? Adam, do you just want to talk us through what you shared there? Because it sounds like you almost got to a breaking point where you just had to do something.
Yeah, we did. So I had, my hours of work per week were 60 plus easily, doing 12-hour days. Majority of the time, it was just a joke. I had to be very blunt. I obviously wasn't rude about it, but it got to the point where my team would, you know, just go into the same breakdowns over and over again. It was horrible. So I come to a point where I sent an email out and made that point. And it really clicked to them. He goes, "Oh yeah, okay, you're right. These machines
But
do make
you
money."
just want to share that point, Adam? What was the point you made?
Yeah, so I asked the leadership and planning team. So I asked them if they use their car to make money, so Uber or delivery driving, and none of them said yes. So I said, "And you service your car?" They all replied yes. So you service your car, but your car doesn't make you money. But you won't let me go in and do maintenance on machines that do make you money. I said, "It doesn't make sense." So they come back and we now have a full maintenance plan. So,
Yeah.
which is good. Never been seen.
So you're getting that mindset right about, and then if you, I suppose, I think that's a great one to use. And if you did say, well, what happens if you didn't service your car? They'd soon be telling you,
That's
well, I
right.
couldn't get the work. It would break down all those topics. The same.
That's right. And when leadership teams are working their KPIs for OEEs and machine availability and things like that, and it's just rubbish, they have to take a step back and listen to what we're telling them about the machines, because they don't know.
Yeah.
And they're the only people they're going to listen to about those machines.
Yep.
And I was able to predict. I was able to predict critical breakdowns. I told them it was going to happen. They didn't give me the machine, and it happened a week before when I predicted it was going to happen. So they were just they threw their hands up and, well, you told us. So, and the machine was down for a month, so it really bit them in the ass.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point, because very often the thing is that when you're driven by day-to-day stuff, if you've got the orders, you want to get the stuff out of the door, and very often people don't understand the importance of maintenance as maintaining the capability, and you often have this conversation. I often have this conversation with lean practitioners that say, well, maintenance doesn't add value, but it does. The thing is that it provides the capability to deliver future output, to satisfy future customers, and so it is part of the routine. The thing that I find is that, though, if you just do planned maintenance, assuming you're doing it successful, the best you can hope for is that this year's no worse than last. So you need to do that at least as a minimum, but then you want to change the role of the maintainer from preventing downtime to preventing defects. Because if you get a plant that's running well, the plant runs well, you can predict when the maintenance is required. You can also stabilize and extend time between the life of components. So it's really getting what you've done, Adam, getting that plant maintenance accepted as a reality is the fundamental step to moving towards being to achieve an industry leading performance. And I'm guessing that you're in your organization, having got the plant running better, you've the rest of the organization has used, you've used that capacity, that capability to thrive as a business.
Yeah, it was good to have the support of the leadership team behind me as well, right from the top, from the EGM, and it's it's been good. So we've been able to work with production. We've had breakdowns in between to move the schedule around, but it's staying pretty consistent.
Yeah, what I've found is that in organisations that do maintenance well, they can quite often get sort of stuck in a loop of they don't quite achieve zero breakdowns because the focus is on maintaining a good level, and even organisations like Landtech, who are a case study for lean. You see that they will improve. If you look at the history from when they implemented lean back in, I don't know, the 90s or something, they had a blip around sort of 2000 where they started to roll back because new people joined the organization. The leaders got used to a situation where reliability was good. And so they didn't replace engineers, or they in fact didn't allow a lot of time for new people coming in to lock into the new culture, to the culture that they had previously. So one of the things that I find with organizations that are successful long term, over 10, 20 years, is that they're always sort of looking to how do we improve, and then when things hit them, they're in far better shape to to survive and thrive. So what I would say is, I mean, the diagnostic looks at, have you got stable, and then when you've got stable, what are you doing with the time? And like I say, getting one of the key things around, if you've got stable operation, is looking to extend mean time between intervention. And engineers are in a really good place to take out, if you look at a typical operator, even in a top company, there'll be, I'm thinking of a particular bottling line making fizzy drinks that everybody in the world drinks. The operator's touching the line every few minutes, and that's not productive, but engineering wise, you can get that and extend the time between intervention. So you can get hands-off production. And that's, where the top plants in the world are. There's, getting mean time between intervention to 2 hours, or even in some cases a shift, means that the frontline team, the role changes completely to, a high performance team driving a lot of the routine. So there's always a next step, but the first step definitely, as you found, Adam, is getting a full PM and getting it organized so that it's effective.
Yep.
Yes. So we're still
Okay.
So from that we're doing still doing breakdowns every now and then, but it'll eventually roll into effective PMs. So that mindset's definitely changed.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, well, I'm just we're coming to the last 5 minutes, so I'm just about to put up the poll. But while we're doing the poll, Dennis, can I just, so if a couple of people here are now looking to do a pilot, okay, so they can go in, assess the equipment, get the condition, get the routines going, who should be part of that pilot? Is it just a maintenance team thing, or what would be your recommendations? And while you're answering that question, I will be putting up the poll from today's forum, so your feedback will be greatly appreciated. So Dennis, over to you. Who should be involved in the pilot?
Okay, well, I think the thing about the pilot is that it needs to have sort of three levels of involvement. So there's the frontline team, and that would be production, maintenance, and possibly, depends on the industry, but quality control. So these are people where you're looking, you've picked a particular asset you're going to focus on, and OEE is a good driver because it measures effectiveness. So you start to identify from OEE what is where the gaps are, and then using a practical project over a quarter, those teams could meet 8 to 10 times over the quarter. Now they need to be facilitated by ideally the team leader. So the team leader isn't in the team because you want the team leader to be coaching the team. And again, that might need a facilitator. So if from an engineering point of view, I'd be looking at ideally being a production team leader, but it depends, if you've got if it depends on where you are, you might have to drive it from within maintenance. And then you need a sponsor, or really you need sponsors at the senior level to be able to make sure that what the lessons that you learn from the pilot actually feed into the business planning. So there's sort of 3 levels simultaneously, but the most important part to get improvement is the frontline team. So that there's sort of 8 to 10 meetings. And if anybody's interested, I've got a set of a timetable for that team and what they would do each section. But the thing is, they're working on practical stuff. So they're doing criticality assessment, condition appraisal, looking at the equipment. They'll get the gains, but they won't be sustained long term unless you've got the team leader in a coaching role rather than a doing role, and you've got the senior sponsor who's actually looking at, well, why didn't that happen automatically? We call the diagnostic a hidden factory diagnostic because the gains that come out are typically have always been there. So it's almost like releasing a hidden factory. So it's the 3 levels. Again, very happy to sort of provide you with a framework of what works. We call it workplace learning because it's really about driving, using the lessons from the shop floor to drive through change.
Yeah.
So does that give you enough, Kevin?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I think if you wouldn't mind sharing that information. So thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you again soon.
Cheers. Bye now.
Thank you very much. If you've got any feedback, please leave it into the chat. That'd be great.
Thanks, everyone.